So we are today because we have Louise, Jett here, and the topic is humor. We felt we would invite Dror to introduce Louise. So Dror, go for it.
Got it. Thank you very much. So those of you who've been members and coming around already know Louise has a very long CV and bio. And if I would go through the whole thing, we would be here and she won't get a chance to talk. And I won't get a chance to be humorous. So we won't do that. Just let me say that I work with Louise with the AEU on the website redesign meeting. So I know that she's, besides being a professor of media and web design and all of that, she's very good. And you could see by her smile right now that she's a humorous, fun person. What else can we say? She's a leader in training for the AEU, which is something that if we've gone to her talks and into some of the workshops, we know how valuable that is. And we appreciate that she's bringing some of her ethical history and stuff to us. Louise, have I said enough about you? Can I say I could go on? Okay, so let's get on with the deal. When I saw Louise on Friday with the web design, I said, Louise, I'm going to give you 3 jokes, and I want you to tell me which one of these was made by AI. Ask artificial intelligence to write me a joke. I had a joke sent in created by a 9-year-old child. And the other one came out of a can of dad jokes that my wife gave me. She thought I need some more jokes to tell. So here are the jokes. Think about it and later decide which was out of the can, artificial intelligence, or the child. Joke number 1. Why did the child cross the playground? Think about it. I'm going to give you the answer. To get to the other slide. Very cute. What happens to the frog that parked in a no parking zone? He got towed. Very good. And the last one is, why did the tomato turn red? He saw the salad dressing. Hysterical. Okay, later today, after the talk, we will see if Louise was able to, and as well as you, to tell which one was AI, the 9-year-old kid, and the box of dad jokes. And now, without further ado, Louise, make us laugh and appreciate creativity. Thank you. And you could take me off. Thank you.
Thank you, Dror. That was a lot of fun. I'm going to be thinking. I don't want to answer just yet, but I'll be thinking about which was which. I love a good pun, so I appreciate that humor. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm Louise Jett. I'm a leader in training with the American Ethical Union, and today I'm going to talk about cultivating creativity and ethical humor and where we can find ethical culture and humanism in popular culture. So I'm a proponent of big tent humanism. Oh, wait, that's the wrong Felix Adler. That's the Felix Adler who was a circus clown. Oh, there we go. Much better. That's our Felix, the founder of ethical culture. As I was saying, I'm a proponent of big tent humanism. For me, big tent humanism is the inclusion of secular and religious people who share the same core values and goals. It means what we believe is less important than how we behave. It raises deed above creed and allows us to find allies in all walks of life. I have a hunch based on my life experience that lots of people have no idea they're living humanist values when in actuality, they are. I'm a religious humanist. I consider ethical humanism my religion, and I explicitly talk about my humanism. It shows up whenever I'm in relationship with others. And many times when I talk about my humanism and my values, people will say to me, well, then I'm a humanist too. So in the spirit of this platform, I propose you might just be a humanist if you think knowledge and wisdom are best obtained by studying the observable world and using the scientific method. That's very humanist. You're good to others because you think that that's the best way to be. Yeah, I would agree with that. You cultivate meaning in your life and strive to make the world a better place. And you might just be a humanist if you love Star Trek. Oh, yes, Star Trek is popular in all sorts of humanist circles. I think it's so beloved because it embraces some core humanistic values. It is principled, but not stuffy. It displays a brave defense of values, and it encourages us to be accepting of all people, but not all behavior. It's no surprise that Star Trek contains all these humanist values because the show's creator, Gene Roddenberry, was a humanist. There is little doubt to this fact because Roddenberry was explicit about his humanism, a fact that his son, Rod Roddenberry, reinforced when he said in a Facebook post, to label things, my father was most certainly a humanist. As proof, Rod linked out to an interview in the 1991 edition of the Humanist magazine. In it, his father said, I've been sure from the first that the job of Star Trek was to use drama and adventure as a way of portraying humanity in its various guises and beliefs. The result was that Star Trek in the original series, but even more powerfully in the second series, is an expression of my own beliefs, using my characters to act out human problems and equations. Gene Roddenberry knew that diversity is a strength we need for humanity to survive. Misogynistic and racist attitudes prevailed when Star Trek premiered in 1966. I know these attitudes are in some ways still prevalent today, but Star Trek serves as an example of the progress that has been made. Roddenberry recalled a time when NBC asked him, how many women do you have on the ship? He said, they thought that we certainly wouldn't have a ship's complement that was half men and half women. NBC commented that I should consider the amount of hanky-panky that would be going on if the ship were equally divided among the sexes. We argued, and I finally agreed with NBC that I would make the ship 1/3 women, thinking to myself with a chuckle that 1/3 of a crew complement of healthy women could certainly handle the men anyway. NBC also pushed back against the diversity on the show. Roddenberry said he received comments like, come on, you're certainly not going to have blacks and whites working together. To which he replied, if we don't have blacks and whites working together by the time our civilization catches up to the time frame in the series, there won't be any people. He said this argument was so sensible that it even stopped the zealots. Roddenberry envisioned a future in which diversity was not just accepted, but it was celebrated. He said, the show was an attempt to say that humanity will reach maturity and wisdom on the day that it begins not just to tolerate, but to take a special delight in differences in ideas and differences in life forms. In 1966, to have a Black woman on the bridge of a starship was revolutionary. Uhura was played by Nichelle Nichols and was one of the first Black women in a lead role in a TV series. She cut through all the stereotypes. She was a strong, capable Black officer working alongside white people. Uhura also confronted another cultural taboo head-on, and in November 1968, she and Captain Kirk would share an on-screen interracial kiss, the first of its kind. This kiss made an impact. It was broadcast only 1 year after the Supreme Court declared interracial marriage legal. It's funny because the kiss wasn't even really romantic. Some sadistic human-like aliens forced the dashing white captain to kiss the beautiful Black communications officer. But the kiss between the actors William Shatner and Nichelle Nichols in the episode called Plato's Stepchildren helped change attitudes in America about what was allowed to be shown on TV. It made an early statement about the coming acceptance of interracial relationships. After the first season, Nichols was thinking about leaving Star Trek to pursue a theater career. She decided to stay when one of her greatest fans, Martin Luther King Jr., convinced her not to leave the show. When she told him she was thinking of doing so, he told her, "You cannot do that." He asked Nichols, "Don't you understand what Gene Roddenberry has achieved?" He said, "For the first time, we are being seen the world over as we should be seen. Do you understand that this is the only show that my wife Coretta and I allow our children to stay up and watch?" And the representation didn't stop there. The show also starred Japanese character Hikaru Sulu, played by George Takei. Takei later came out as gay, and this became canon for his character in the reboot movie, Star Trek Beyond. Takei said that he considers himself a humanist Buddhist, and that his faith is a way of life, a way of thinking, and a way of looking at the world. One of my favorite things he once said, "Infinite diversity in infinite combinations. Therein lies our strength, and therein lies our joy." In 2012, Takei won the LGBT Humanist Pride Award. And I want to watch this brief video of his acceptance speech because it encapsulates everything that's good about Star Trek. And it also brings up some things that are still relevant today. And I just find it a very powerful video.
I'm George Takei, and I'm honored to be recognized by the American Humanist Association with the 2012 LGBT Humanist Pride Award. This recognition is particularly special to me because back in 1991, my old boss and the creator and producer of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, was similarly honored. He looked to the future as one where we have confidence in our creative spirit, problem-solving gifts, and our innovation to boldly go where no one has gone before. And he felt that it was the diversity of this planet coming together and working in concert that was our strength and also our joy. I've shared that philosophy with him throughout my life because I believe in the oneness of this world. I believe in the dignity of the individual and their worth. And I believe that we are all interlinked by the law of cause and effect. The good that we do produces good results, powerful results. And the evil that people do cause pain and suffering and loss, but can be overcome by good. I know this in my own life because as a young boy, I grew up incarcerated behind the barbed wire fences of American internment camps, 2 of them, as a matter of fact. Pearl Harbor was bombed, and overnight, American citizens of Japanese ancestry were looked at with fear and suspicion and hate, simply because we looked like the people who bombed Pearl Harbor. President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which ordered that all Japanese Americans on the West Coast, approximately 120,000 of us, be summarily rounded up with no charges, with no trial, with no due process, and imprisoned in 10 barbed wire internment camps in some of the most hellish places in this country. The barbed wire fences that confined me as a child have been torn down. But I still see another kind of barbed wire fence that confines another group of Americans. These are legalistic, religious, and social barbed wire fences. Fences that have the sharp, hard barbs of hate and discrimination in them. There are gays, lesbians, bisexual, and transgender people who want to live a full and equal life. But because of those barbs in our society, they are prevented from that. But the campaign for equality for the LGBT community stands, and we have been making progress. Many states now have marriage equality. They are still being challenged, and we will fight them with all our might. And we are glad to know that we have many allies that stand with us. And the members of the American Humanist Association have been strong supporters. And we are proud to be a part of that movement together with the American Humanist Association. And so it is with pride and deep appreciation that I accept the 2012 LGBT Humanist Pride Award. Thank you very much.
I just love him. He's a humanist icon. Yes, yes. And, you know, over 10 years later, we're still grappling with the issues that he raises in the video, and he's still fighting. He still remains a voice of reason and humor. I highly suggest you follow him on social media. His posts give me life. I really appreciate him. So Star Trek teaches us that we can, via critical thinking and compassion, solve the problems that we're facing. And we don't have to have any outside or supernatural help. All we have is each other, and that's enough if we work together. And lots of the show's fans definitely carry forth these humanistic values that are portrayed on the screen. I love this very specific example. Roddenberry received this letter in 1973, and I want to read it to you because it's phenomenal. Dear Sir, I have never written to a television producer before, but now I must. Last Friday, my parents, both in their 70s, were robbed in the New York City area while on their way to visit me. Their car and money were taken, and they were beaten. After wandering in shock for nearly an hour, they had the good fortune to be spotted by a group of young people calling themselves the Star Trek Club of New York. These youngsters, none of them over 20, took my parents to the nearest hospital, paid for their treatment out of their own pockets, and then went almost 20 miles out of their way to drive them to my door and help them inside. Several days later, I paid a visit to this club's meeting to repay them the money. To my surprise, they refused to accept money. It was patiently explained to me that they believe that Star Trek lives in them when they help those in trouble. Club rules forbid taking financial payment for help. They also said that Gene Roddenberry's prime directive was to love all humans, irregardless of race, creed, or color. There was a letter from you to them prominently displayed on the wall, which is where I got your address. At this meeting, I also saw Black and Puerto Rican youngsters taking full part in the activities. The club explained that they enjoyed each other's differences instead of fearing them. As a Black, I came away with a renewed faith in my fellow man. How did you get through to these kids? What is your secret? These kids really believed both in Star Trek and in you. As producer of this show, you should be proud of what you've done. I will furnish you these youngsters' name upon request. I feel that they should be commended. As for Star Trek, you can bet that my family are converts. The help these kids gave us, when we must pass on to others. Thank you for letting me take up your valuable time to have my say. I've never encountered anything like this before. With their attitudes, obviously fashioned after yours, these kids will make the world a better place to live for everyone. Sincerely, Paul Johnson. So heartwarming, a beautiful example of ethics in action. Star Trek isn't the only place we can see humanism on display in popular culture. It is implicitly woven throughout TV shows, movies, and books. And in the Star Trek tradition, a lot of science fiction has humanism in it. For example, it is found within the books of the first Black woman science fiction author, Octavia Butler. I have enjoyed each of Butler's books that I've read, but Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents have so far been my favorites. Butler introduces us to a humanist vision, a future that makes space for speculative spirituality without the need for dogma or an omnipotent supreme being. This sounds like big tent humanism to me. I'll try not to spoil the Parable of the Sower or the Parable of the Talent for you, but basically society is crumbling in America. The main character, Olamina, is living through a countrywide catastrophe, eventually called the Pox, short for the apocalypse. She knows humanity needs a better way and develops a new human-centered philosophy called Earthseed, which is best described by another character in the 2-book series, and they describe it as such. Olamina believes in a God that does not in the least love her. In fact, her God is a process or a combination of processes, not an entity. It is not consciously aware of her or of anything. It is not conscious at all. God is change, she says, and means it. Some of the faces of her gods are biological evolution, chaos theory, relativity theory, the uncertainty principle, and of course, the second law of thermodynamics. God is change, and in the end, God prevails. Yet Earthseed is not a fatalistic belief system. God can be directed, focused, speeded, slowed, shaped. All things change, but all things need not change in all ways. Odd, hardly religious at all. Even the Earthseed destiny seems to have little to do with religion. I couldn't have said it better myself. Olamina believed the Earthseed destiny was actually in the stars. The world she lived in was so terribly cruel and environmentally devastated. She believed we had to work toward humanity's rescue or it would cease to exist. Even though she may never see the people make it to Mars or go there herself, she worked toward getting people there. It reminds me of the important and challenging work we have to do to fight climate change. Future generations are depending on us. It is essential that they inherit a healthy, inhabitable, and sustainable planet. I do hope you join the AU for its All Society platform on April 30th. We're going to have the opportunity to hear from the Our Children's Trust. It's a nonprofit public interest law firm that provides campaign-based legal services to youth from diverse backgrounds to secure their legal rights to a safe climate. The youth plaintiffs in the upcoming lawsuit, which is Held versus the state of Montana, will be featured during the platform. The lawsuit is the first ever constitutional and children's climate trial in the United States history. The hearing will begin on June 12th. Octavia Butler would say, we need to shape climate change in a way that will result in positive or at least less negative outcomes while we still can. She wrote in the Parable of the Sower, all that you change, all that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. The clergy members of the Earthseed religion were called shapers. Butler encourages us to shape change when we can, and not just recognize, but also work toward change that is outside of our reach. We cannot give up. She says God is malleable. And this idea resonates with my humanist belief system. I believe in the power of intentional ethical action. I believe we can slow and mitigate the damage caused by climate change, end racism, and dismantle white supremacy, and leave a healthier and more humane world for future generations. That is my hope. We need to empower ourselves and our youth to ensure a safe climate. We must be explicit about our values and our humanism. We must be shapers like the young people shown here. Unfortunately, we will see humanist values portrayed on the big screen and in written works implicitly, but we don't see characters who are really vocal about their humanism in popular culture very often. And representation is powerful. Real representation not only strengthens our values by allowing us to see ourselves in others, fictional or not, but it also introduces our life stance to those who may also identify as humanists, but they just don't know about our movement. Again, I think representation is needed for all humanists, secular, religious, or otherwise. And I want us all under that big tent. So I looked for explicit humanism in a lot of places, and I tried to find representations of fictional humanists across genres. And I found this scene from the popular TV show The Office to be comical and share-worthy. It was mentioned in an article from 2022 by Luciano Gonzalez Vega, who at the time served as an administrator for the Secular Latino Alliance. So let's give it a watch. In short.
This office is cursed. We need to do something about it.
Conference room?
Maybe the conference room, maybe the annex. I'm just saying, at least right here is cursed. Conference room, 10 minutes.
On the one hand, it's a relief to know that it's not just me. The whole office is cursed. On the other hand, I may have to deal with the dark unknown.
Question: has anyone recently offended the gypsy?
We have to have done something wrong.
You ran over an employee.
That was the curse, Stanley, and we are trying to find the cause of the curse. Oscar, are you Santeria?
I was raised Catholic, but I'm agnostic now, so I guess I'm a secular humanist.
Oh, great. We have a secular humanist here. That is disgusting.
Michael, you know what secular humanism is?
Yes, it is a philosophy which says people can improve their lives by using reason instead of religion or superstition.
Oh.
You do. You know, that's one of the only instances I've seen humanism mentioned explicitly in a television show. And it's a shame that that scene was deleted. And Gonzalez Vegas thinks so too. He wrote that mundane representation can matter just as much as epic representation. He said, I don't need humanistic superheroes as cool as that'd be to get. I just want more representation in any form, so that this character Oscar would say that he's a secular humanist, you know, that feeds our souls. His comment made me ask the question, are there humanist superheroes? And I actually could find a few. So let's take John Constantine, for example. Constantine first appeared in Swamp Thing in 1985. He is described as a Catholic and a strident humanist who struggles to overcome the influence of both heaven and hell over humanity. He is foul-mouthed and witty. He does have some bad habits, but he is also one of the most powerful sorcerers in his world. There's a duality at play in Constantine. He is a misanthrope and a humanist at the same time. His motivations are ambiguous, and this adds to the mystery of his character. We also have Reed Richards, or AKA Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four. He has a complicated religious backstory. He's been described as humanist, a believer in God, and an atheist. I know some humanists could probably relate. Dubbed one of the smartest people in the Marvel universe, Reed was a mild-mannered scientist. In a classic example of superhero irony, the accident turned stubborn, rigid, scientifically minded Reed into a rubber man with super flexibility. I think there's a lesson here that all humanists can learn. We must appeal both to the head and the heart. As we concentrate and rely on science and facts, we must not forget the importance of our humanity and emotions. If we don't, we could become humanist villains without even knowing it. And yes, I was able to find a villain, and his name was Albert Einstein Robot. So villains like Albert Einstein Robot, who was one of the nefarious mad thinkers, intellectual robots. These diabolical machines included Samuel Clemens, Confucius, Leonardo da Vinci, Virginia Woolf, Abraham Lincoln, and other historic intellectuals and figures. The mad thinker was a nemesis of Captain America, and he created these robots to provide intellectual stimulation. He was obviously lonely. The Albert Einstein robot, like the scientist he was based on, was explicitly linked to humanism and ethical culture. The real Einstein was a passionate humanist who actively supported the ethical culture movement in the United States. He was a founding member of the First Humanist Society of New York and an honorary associate of the Rationalist Press Association in the UK. Einstein's philosophies had human potential and fellowship at its heart. He held a central belief for the need for humanity in science. He advocated the use of reason and compassion to curb greed and selfishness. His humanistic beliefs are a key part of his legacy, and he wrote about them, so we have them on record, but these convictions are frequently left out of his story. Again, we see explicit humanism omitted from the narrative. Of course, implicit humanism is in most movies that addresses the themes of love, community, intellect, and ethics. Movies like Shawshank Redemption, based on a short story by Stephen King. The movie tells the tale of Andy Dufresne, a successful young banker in prison for a murder, one that he didn't commit. He is sent to Shawshank Prison, and Dufresne finds himself in an unfair position. He needs to stand up for himself and deal with the harsh life behind bars. He begins to go through a phase of self-growth and actualization, and he creates an escape plan. The Shawshank Redemption takes humanistic approach in its storytelling, and Dufresne understands that he controls his destiny and makes the best out of the situation. He's clever and observant, but he also has heart. At one point in the movie, he says, "Remember, Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies." This movie is so important because it humanizes incarcerated individuals. It came out in the 1990s at a time when society was still pursuing and glorifying a punitive criminal justice system. On a narrative level, The Shawshank Redemption is a movie about the power of hope in the face of extraordinary hardship. But in Dufresne's story, we find a blistering critique of the prison system and the criminal justice policies in the US. In the film, the audience gets to see the system as harsh and corrupt, and those incarcerated there as people, human beings with inherent worth and dignity, ones who have a right to rehabilitation. And in the 25 years since Shawshank debuted, and by the way, it bombed at the box office, public opinion in America has shifted away from the punitive view of the 90s to a more humanistic perspective embodied by the film. We still have a long way to go, but this exemplifies the power of storytelling to shape change. I could go on and on about my favorite books, movies, and TV shows that feature implicit humanism, but I want to take a moment and point out some famous humanists like Bjork, Ta-Nehisi Coates, George Clooney, Stephen Fry, Natalie Portman, Frank Zappa, Miley Cyrus, Zadie Smith, Virginia Woolf, Salman Rushdie, Kurt Vonnegut, Margaret Atwood, Alice Walker, Kristen Bell, James Baldwin, and Zora Neale Hurston, just to name a few. We are in good company, my friends. But we need to start being explicitly humanist in public spaces. We need to lead by example so there can be more everyday characters like Oscar Martinez in The Office, who verbally expresses that he is a secular humanist. He declares his connection to humanism, and more humanist superheroes like Reed Richards, who demonstrate that we can have morals without worshiping a deity. Humanist fictional characters illustrate the fact that we can develop our own ethics and strive to live our values without the threat of never-ending damnation. I encourage us to not only let our humanism show up anytime we are in relationship with others and ourselves, but also to vocalize our values and claim our humanism. We can increase the visibility of our life stance by being explicit humanists. And if people can see it, they can be it. The more creative individuals who identify as humanists, the more representation we will see in popular culture. And we know stories can be an escape from real life, a much needed respite. But as Star Trek and Shawshank Redemption so effectively show us, new fictional experiences can also change our perspectives and shape our behavior in our real lives. The changes can be life-affirming and saving. Shifts in perspectives can lead to the granting of human rights for the oppressed and marginalized people among us. Being in popular culture can help people who don't even know they are humanists find us. This awareness is critical to the health of ethical humanism and all forms of humanism, really, and we need humanism to guide us now more than ever. One day soon, I'd love to say that we're going to need a bigger tent. Thank you.